Once again, a huge thank you to Jonchung8, the diamond sponsor of this series. Wishing you and all fellow Taoists a wonderful week ahead. Also, I'd like to apologize for not replying to your comments as often as before. Things have been quite busy recently, and I've been spending all my free time making videos. Brother Han, an all-out blow from a great encompassment stage gold devouring Immortal is not to be taken lightly. I know that you're confident in your abilities, but this is an extremely perilous undertaking, Worm 3 said to Han Li through voice transmission. Brother Han, all he said is that you had to take a punch from him head-on, but he didn't stipulate that you can't use any treasures. I can temporarily lend you my Heavenly Fox Bloodform Saber, so you have a better chance of withstanding a punch from him. Fox 3 also communicated through voice transmission. Thanks for looking out for me, but I can look after myself, Han Li replied with a smile. Worm 3 and Fox 3 exchanged a perplexed glance with each other upon hearing this, but didn't try to dissuade Han Li any further. If you have any pieces of protective clothing, then I suggest you put on as many layers as possible. As long as you don't evade my punch, you can do anything you want to defend yourself. Let me warn you that I'm not going to be holding back, the man said with a wide grin. Han Li nodded in response, then turned to Worm 3's trio and gestured for them to distance themselves from him. The three of them immediately retreated to close to 10 kilometers away. What on earth is Brother Han planning? Will he really be able to withstand an all-out blow from this gold-devouring Immortal? Fox 3 asked. I'm not sure, but knowing the type of person that he is, I'm sure he won't take any undue risks, so we'll just have to wait and see, Worm 3 replied. Sheng Shan didn't say anything. In fact, he had the most confidence in Han Li out of the trio, and he had a feeling that this gold-devouring Immortal was about to be screwed over by Han Li. After Worm 3's trio had retreated to a safe distance away, Han Li swept a sleeve through the air to conjure up a spherical light barrier around him, one that was over 10,000 feet in radius. You think your time spirit domain will be enough to oppose my attack? The golden-robed man asked as he raised an eyebrow. I'm ready, Han Li declared in a calm manner, then took a step back before adopting a horse stance while simultaneously channeling both his heavenly baleful purgatory arts and his great 5 elemental illusion mantra. An intrigued look appeared in the young man's eyes upon seeing this, and all of a sudden, a burst of radiant, golden light erupted out of his body as his robes began to flap and billow audibly. At the same time, rings of golden light began to proliferate through the surrounding area from beneath his feet like ripples over the surface of a lake, spreading all the way to hundreds of kilometers away. All of the grains of golden sand in the desert began to bounce up and down as if they were jumping for joy, and concerned looks appeared in the eyes of Worm 3's trio as they sensed the golden-robed man's unfathomable power. Han Li was situated closest to the young man, so he was able to sense his power even more clearly than Worm 3 and the others, and even though he was stunned internally, he was able to maintain a calm facade. Here I come, the young man declared as he also took a step back, pulling his fist back to his own waist as he prepared to launch himself forward. Han Li remained silent as he summoned his mantra-treasured axis, which fused as one with his time-spirit domain, and rose up into the air like a bright moon that was giving off rays of gentle light. Immediately thereafter, illusory dawn sand spilled over the ground, almost indistinguishable from the golden sand of the desert, and a series of mountains quickly emerged over the landscape. The eastern vicissitudes divine tree then emerged before transforming into a lush forest, while water of time flowed down from the heavens, forming a winding river that trickled through the forest. Finally, a golden torch that was releasing countless specks of golden fire rose up into the air, and the specks of golden fire resembled stars that lit up the entire sky. The golden-robed young man was quite taken aback to see this, but unlike Chi Mozi, he wasn't aware of the secrets of the great five elemental illusion mantra, so all he felt was intrigue. He could sense that the surrounding flow of time was slowing down, and that his movements were becoming more and more restricted, but he still scoffed. How are these illusory objects going to help you? At the same time, the golden light radiating from his body had reached an unprecedented level of brightness, and he launched himself forward while throwing a punch directly at Han Li. A giant, golden fist projection shot forth through the air, and it seemed to be completely unaffected by Han Li's time law powers as it hurtled toward him with devastating power. However, in the instant that the fist projection was unleashed, the man noticed that the punch was far less powerful than he had anticipated. Immediately thereafter, he finally realized what had happened to him. Much to Han Li's dismay, most of the time law threads that he had recently attained had been drained of their power in order to unleash the great five elemental illusion mantra's time reversal ability, and he hurriedly withdrew his 5 time attribute law treasures in order to conserve his time law powers. As soon as the law treasures faded away, the fist projection instantly accelerated significantly, reaching Han Li in the blink of an eye. Fortunately, he was already fully prepared, and his physical constitution had been bolstered to the maximum by his heavenly baleful purgatory arts, as he threw a punch of his own in retaliation. At the same time, he drew upon all of the starpore in his entire body before condensing it into his fist, and an earth-shattering boom rang out as his fist collided with the oncoming golden fist projection. A vast explosion of golden and white light took place, stirring up an incredibly chaotic vortex that spread through the air in all directions, annihilating everything within a radius of dozens of kilometers. Hundreds of sand whirls erupted up into the heavens like a nest of monstrous, golden serpents, producing a deafening rumbling. Han Li was sent flying back through the air before plunging several thousand feet deep into the sand below, and all of his joints were creaking and groaning incessantly, while his entire body was throbbing with pain. He thrust his palms forcefully into the ground beneath himself, launching himself out of the sand and barreling his way straight through dozens of sand whirls, before drawing to a halt in front of the golden-robed young man. Shortly thereafter, the sand whirls faded away, but there was still a vast volume of sand drifting through the air, severely affecting visibility. "I believe I've just fulfilled my end of the deal," Han Li said, then threw up a mouthful of blood. "How is this possible? What did your spirit domain do to me just now?" the man asked as he looked down at his own fist with a perplexed expression. "Your cultivation base had temporarily been reversed several million years, but it'll gradually recover," Han Li said, and despite his nonchalant tone, the golden-robed man was astonished to hear this. Sure enough, he could sense that his own cultivation base had been significantly regressed, and that was why his punch had been lacking in power. "Seeing as you've managed to withstand a punch from me, I will also fulfill my end of the deal. Not only will I no longer oppose you, I can even take you to the 7th level, but in exchange, you have to free me from this pagoda," the man said. "If you had agreed to my proposal without making me withstand that punch, then our agreement would have been able to stand on those terms. But now that I've been forced to withstand a punch from you, some of the conditions have to be changed," Han Li said. "What do you mean by that? Are you going back on our agreement?" the man asked as his brows furrowed slightly. "No, I'm still going to fulfill my promise of freeing you from this pagoda, but in return, I need you to do something for me," Han Li replied. "What is it?" the man snapped, struggling to rein in his own temper. At this point, Worm 3's trio was about to arrive on the scene, so Han Li switched to voice transmission as he said, "Among the people who entered the Ian Pagoda, one of them is a great encompassment cultivator who's a sworn enemy of mine, and I want you to help me deal with him. Of course, This is not something that necessarily has to be done. As long as he doesn't come after me, you don't have to target him, and once we leave the Ian Pagoda, you'll be free. So you won't have to do it. That's it, the man asked in a skeptical manner. That's it, Han Li confirmed with a nod. At the same time, they were joined by Worm Three's trio, and the three of them were all looking at Han Li with rather peculiar looks on their faces. They had detected extremely formidable law power fluctuations, while Han Li was unleashing his 5-elemental illusory world, but they weren't aware of exactly what had happened. However, it was now abundantly clear to them what had unfolded after detecting the golden-robed man's regressed cultivation base. Also, there's something else that I can tell you. During my travels, I encountered 2 high zenith stage gold-devouring immortals, and I presume you'd be interested in them, Han Li continued. Where did you encounter these 2 gold-devouring immortals? The young man immediately asked. One in the northern glacial immortal region and the other in the golden origin immortal region. One of them was a small child, while the other was a vicious woman, Han Li lied, making up a story on the spot. If you can take me to them, I can protect you even after we leave the Ian Pagoda, and if that great encompassment cultivator that you spoke of comes after you, I will do everything in my power to kill him, the golden-robed man promised through voice transmission. That sounds like a good deal, Han Li replied with a smile. With this agreement made, the tension between the two of them eased significantly, and Han Li smiled as he asked, "Can you tell me your name now?" "My name is Glin," the man replied, and Han Li revealed his own name as well. "Time is of the essence, fellow Taoist Han. I'll take you to the 7th level right away," Glin said in an urgent manner. "There's no hurry, please allow me some time to rest and recover," Han Li said. Even though Glin's cultivation base had been regressed by Han Li's 5-elemental illusory world, an all-out blow from him was still nothing to scoff at, and Han Li had sustained some internal injuries from withstanding that punch. With that, he sat down with his legs crossed, then took a pill before closing his eyes to meditate. On the other side of the golden desert, Lei Yus and the others were currently gathered before a reddish-brown stone archway. A series of runes were engraved onto the archway, 7 or 8 of which were currently flashing with faint, golden light. Inside the archway was a dark red light barrier, bound to which were 9 dark golden chains. Upon close inspection, one would discover that these chains were also riddled with tiny scale-like runes, and they were giving off extremely formidable restrictive power. "What's the verdict, fellow Taoist Lei? Can you unravel this 9-dragon deity-locking formation or not?" Jin Liu asked with slightly furrowed brows. Instead of immediately giving a response, Lei Yu spoke briefly with Wen Zhang in hushed tones, then said, "This 9-dragon deity-locking formation has been tampered with by someone, making it more difficult to unravel than otherwise, so I'm going to need some time." "How long will it take?" Su Anqian asked. "This formation is very complex to begin with, and even with just a single dragon scale chain altered, the difficulty of unraveling the formation will increase significantly. At the very least, 4 of these chains have been tampered with, so by my estimates, it's going to take around 2 to 3 days, Lei Yus replied. 2 to 3 days, that's way too long, Jin Liu exclaimed. If you have some other faster way to break the formation, then feel free to do so yourself, fellow Taoist Jin, Wen Zhang said with a displeased expression. An angry look flashed through Jin Liu's eyes upon hearing this, but he offered no response. When it came to formations, his aptitude was very mediocre. Otherwise, he wouldn't have misidentified the Star Palace standoff formation as the Yin-Yang latch formation earlier. Hence, he was naturally unable to unravel this 9-dragon deity locking formation. The Land siblings exchanged a glance with each other, then shook their heads in unison, clearly also powerless in the face of this formation. After a brief moment of contemplation, Lei Yu said, "There's something else I can try, but I don't have much confidence that it's going to succeed." "If there's something else we can try, then we naturally have to try it. We can't afford to be delayed here like this," Jin Liu immediately said. "You make it sound so simple. Senior Marshal Brother Lei is referring to a way to break the formation by force, and even the slightest mishap could result in grievous bodily harm." Wen Zhang snapped in a disgruntled manner. A hint of concern appeared in Su Anqian's eyes upon hearing this, while Jin Liu stroked his own chin with tightly furrowed brows as he mused. "In that case, it looks like we'll just have to wait." Fellow Taoist Lei, if the alternative method is too risky, then it would be better to be safe than sorry, even if it means a delay of 2 or 3 days, Su Anqian said. "It's fine, Celestial Maiden Su, I can give it a try," Lei Yus replied. A hint of exasperation flashed through Wen Zhang's eyes upon hearing this, and he wanted to try and dissuade Lei Yus, but he knew that it would only be in futility, so he remained silent. "In order to break this formation quickly, I'll have to use the 6 integrations wilderness formation to force open the 9 dragon deity locking formation, thereby temporarily creating an opening for us to pass through. In order to accomplish this, I'm going to need everyone's help," Lei Yu said. "I'm aware of the 6 integrations wilderness formation. It's a formation that's far inferior to the 9 dragon deity locking formation, so how can this possibly work?" Jin Liu asked with a skeptical expression. "The 6 integrations wilderness formation naturally won't be enough to get the job done on its own. I'm going to be using a 9 dragon jewel to serve as the core of the formation in order to enhance its power," Lei Yus explained. "A 9 dragon jewel. If you really do have such a treasure up your sleeve, then this plan becomes a lot more plausible," Jin Liu replied with a nod. "Lan Yan and I will do everything in our power to assist you," Lan Yuanzi assured, while Su Anqian nodded in agreement. With that, Lei Yus flipped a hand over to produce a collection of formation tools, which he began laying out around the stone archway with Wen Zhang's assistance. Before long, the foundation of a hexagonal formation had emerged. Shortly thereafter, the 6 integrations wilderness formation was complete, and after thoroughly examining the formation to ensure that nothing was amiss, Lei Yus declared, "The formation is complete. Please step inside with me, fellow Taoists." Everyone did as they were told, with each person standing on one of the 6 corners of the hexagonal formation, waiting for Lei Yus to activate the formation. Lei Yus exchanged a glance with Su Anqian, then flipped a hand over to produce a fist-sized purple jewel, which flew through the air before descending upon the center of the 6 integrations wilderness formation. There were arcs of lightning flashing over the jewel, and 9 dragons could be seen roaming incessantly over its surface amid bursts of dull rumbling. With the 9 dragon jewel in place, Lei Yus began chanting an incantation, and everyone immediately followed suit while making a series of hand seals before each of them pointed a finger at the jewel. /. 6 beams of spiritual light of different colors shot out of their fingertips before converging within the purple jewel, and countless arcs of purple lightning instantly surged out from within, forming a purple light barrier that encompassed the entirety of the 6 integrations wilderness formation. A draconic roar rang out as the 9 dragon projections flew out of the 9 dragon jewel, following which all of them swelled to around 10 feet in length before pouncing at the stone archway. A resounding boom rang out as the archway shuddered violently, and it immediately began to tremble after the 9 purple dragons surged into the dark red light barrier. Everyone immediately began injecting their immortal spiritual power into the formation upon seeing this, and a hole began to slowly appear at the center of the dark red light barrier, revealing another space beyond it. "It's working," Jin Liu exclaimed with an ecstatic expression. "We're still nowhere near done yet, so don't get complacent," Lei Yus cautioned. As soon as his voice trailed off, the 9 dragon scale chains bound to the stone archway suddenly began to glow with radiant, golden light, and a series of golden ripples erupted out of the chains to fill the entire dark red light barrier. Furthermore, a burst of incredibly chaotic suction had emerged at the point where the golden light and the purple lightning met, sucking in all of the surrounding world's origin chi in a frenzy. At this point, all that could be seen through the hole was a vast expanse of darkness, and the violent aura of spatial turbulence could be detected from the other side. Everyone's expressions changed slightly upon detecting this, and Lei Yus yelled, "It looks like we've underestimated the power of the 9-dragon deity locking formation. We have to make a concerted effort to open up a spatial passageway before the power of the formation is fully activated," Lei Yus yelled. As soon as his voice trailed off, the black vortex at the center of the stone archway suddenly shuddered violently, following which a burst of violent power erupted out from within. At the same time, 9 golden dragon projections shot out of the dragon scale chains bound to the archway, then pounced at Lei Yus and the others. Everyone felt a burst of terrifying power surging directly toward them, and Jin Liu abandoned the formation to make his escape, followed closely by the land siblings. In the wake of their abrupt departure, the entire formation instantly fell apart, and the 9-dragon jewel at the center of the formation also exploded in an uncontrolled state, sending purple lightning erupting in all directions. Wen Zhang also backed out of the formation, and thus, Lei Yus and Su Anqian were the only ones remaining inside, left to face the golden dragon projections and purple lightning on their own. Both of them reacted very quickly, but they were standing on the 2 corners of the hexagonal formation that were closest to the stone archway, leaving them with no time to escape. Lei Yus immediately sprang forward without any hesitation to place himself in front of Su Anqian, and a suit of purple lightning armor was beginning to take shape over his body, but it clearly wasn't going to fully materialize in time. A resounding boom rang out as the golden dragon projections and purple lightning exploded violently. At this point, Jin Liu and the others had already retreated to a safe distance away, and they were all observing the explosion with tense expressions. Rays of golden light and arcs of purple lightning erupted in all directions in a chaotic fashion, violently stirring up all of the world's origin chi within a radius of dozens of kilometers. The chaotic phenomenon raged on for close to a minute before finally subsiding, and as the dust settled, it was revealed that an enormous, charred crater had appeared in the ground. All of the surrounding golden sand had been melted by the intense heat from the explosion, then cooled and solidified into huge golden plates of irregular shapes. Outside the crater, the stone archway remained completely unharmed, and it had already reverted back to its original state. Jin Liu and the others hurriedly flew over to the edge of the crater, before looking down to discover a charred figure, with a more petite figure held tightly in their arms. The suit of silver lightning armor that had previously encased Lei Yus's body had already completely disintegrated, and his robes were also in tatters. His back was heaving violently, and his aura was fluctuating in an extremely unstable fashion, indicating that he had sustained very severe internal injuries. In contrast, Su Anqian was completely unscathed. Wen Zhang was the first one to rush into the crater, and Jin Liu hurriedly followed suit. Jin Liu gently forcefully Lei Yus away from Su Anqian, while Wen Zhang hurriedly caught the former to support him. "Are you all right?" Jin Liu asked as he placed his hands onto Su Anqian's shoulders. Su Anqian shrugged off his hands, then turned to look at Lei Yus, who had just been fed a pill by Wen Zhang, but was still clearly in terrible condition. Upon sensing Su Anqian's gaze, he turned to look back at her before putting up a strong front by flashing her a feeble smile. Su Anqian averted her gaze upon seeing this, but internally, she was rather moved by Lei Yu's selfless gesture. She knew that if it wasn't to protect her, he definitely wouldn't have sustained such severe injuries. Meanwhile, Lei Yus got up into a seated position with Wen Zhang's help, then closed his eyes and began to meditate. As soon as he began channeling his cultivation arts, the residual golden light and purple lightning in his wounds were instantly forced out, and it was such a painful process that his face immediately became twisted with agony, but he remained silent the entire time. A sympathetic look appeared in Su Anqian's eyes upon seeing this, and she strode over to Lei Yus's side, then flipped a hand over to produce a small, blue vial, which she offered to him as she said, "These are some prime water pills from our heavenly water sect. They won't have much of an effect on your injuries, but they're quite potent for replenishing energy, so they should be quite helpful for your recovery." "Thank you, Celestial Maiden Su," Lei Yus said as he accepted the vial with an ecstatic expression, then tipped out a pill from inside and swallowed it before continuing to meditate. A hint of displeasure flashed through Jin Liu's eyes upon seeing this, and he asked, "What do we do now?" When Zhang gave a cold harumph and offered no response, clearly very unhappy with Jin Liu for abandoning the formation. Lan Yan also turned to him with a disdainful expression, but before she had a chance to say anything, she was stopped by Lan Yuanzi. In the wake of their battle against Han Li, Lan Yuanzi had become very averse to confrontation, and he shook his head to dissuade Lan Yan from speaking out against Jin Liu. Lan Yan's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this, but she held her tongue in the end. Right at this moment, all of them suddenly looked up into the sky to discover Han Li's group flying toward them from afar. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly at the sight of the severely ravaged ground below, and upon their landing, Lei Yus also opened his eyes to see what was happening. "Didn't you go another way? Why have you also come here?" Jin Liu asked with slightly furrowed brows. "Is this Ian Pagoda your private property, fellow Taoist Jin? Do we have to secure your permission before we come here?" Fox 3 countered as he raised an eyebrow, and Jin Liu had no response to this. "Who's this fellow Taoist Chi?" Lei Yus asked with his gaze on Kalin. "This is fellow Taoist Kalin. He's been held captive on the 6th level of this Ian Pagoda for many years, and we've arrived at an agreement, one in which he'll be helping us make our way to the 7th level," Han Li replied. Lei Yus was silent for a moment, then cautioned through voice transmission, "Fellow Taoist Chi, please remember that all of the beings trapped in this pagoda were once extremely renowned fugitives of the heavenly court, so making agreements with them could easily backfire if you're not careful." Han Li was rather perplexed about why Lei Yus was offering him these words of caution, but he offered no further explanation as he replied through voice transmission, "Thank you for looking out for me, fellow Taoist Lei." Right at this moment, Worm 3 suddenly remarked, "This is a 9-dragon deity locking formation." "Indeed it is, fellow Taoist. Are you able to bypass it?" Lei Yus asked with a hopeful expression. "The dragon scale chains have been tampered with, so it's going to be a bit difficult," Worm 3 mused. "Indeed, it would have taken me at least 2 days to unravel the formation, so I attempted to break through it by force, only to suffer backlash from the formation and sustain some rather severe injuries." Lei Yus sighed with a forlorn shake of his head. Han Li also turned his attention to the formation, and after some observation, he was able to determine that it would only require less than a day for him to break it. However, before he had a chance to say anything, Kalin had already strode over to the formation, before casually pressing a hand over the runes on the stone archway. "What are you doing? Stop!" Lei Yus hurriedly yelled, but given his current condition, he was powerless to intervene. "Be quiet, I'm breaking the formation, can't you see?" Glenn snapped as he continued what he was doing. The formation has already been tampered with, so it must be treated with caution. If you try to address it haphazardly, you're only going to further compound our woes, Lei Yu said in an enraged manner, and when Zhang was preparing to intervene by force, while Jin Liu was observing from the side, ready to take Su Anqian and escape at the first sign of backlash from the formation. Right at this moment, Kalin pressed down onto one of the runes on the stone archway, and the dark red light barrier at its center instantly brightened significantly, while the 9-dragon scale chain slid away. All of a sudden, the 9-dragon deity locking formation was unraveled, just like that, much to everyone's astonishment. You were the one who tampered with this 9-dragon deity locking formation in the first place, right? Han Li asked through voice transmission. That's right. At the time, I thought that I would perhaps be able to find a way to leave this place if I could go to the 7th level. However, after reaching the 7th level, I was almost beaten to death by the old madman imprisoned up there. I only just barely managed to escape by the skin of my teeth, and after getting back, I reset the formation before altering it for further fortification, Glenn revealed. How did you manage to return from the 7th level? Han Li asked. Thankfully, I had the foresight to open up the chaotic Origin 9 Palace formation on the other side after reaching the 7th level, so I had an escape route that I could take, Glenn explained. Han Li nodded in response, then turned to everyone else as he said, now that the restriction's broken, let's not waste any more time. Lei Yus had some questions that he wanted to ask Han Li, but it was clear that the latter wasn't in the mood to do any explaining, so he didn't raise any questions. However, no one was keen on stepping through the spatial door right away, and it seemed that everyone was quite apprehensive about what could be on the other side. If none of you are willing to go in, then I'll be going on ahead, Glenn sneered, then passed through the dark red light barrier and vanished out of sight. Han Li conjured up a layer of protective spiritual light around himself, then also began to make his way toward the light barrier, but as soon as he took a step forward, a yellow vortex suddenly appeared beneath his feet, releasing tremendous suction force. The vortex had appeared so abruptly that Han Li was caught completely off guard, and in the blink of an eye, close to the entirety of his lower body had sunken into it. Despite the abrupt nature of this turn of events, Han Li was able to react very quickly, channeling his heavenly baleful purgatory arts right away, and 2 dull thumps rang out beneath his feet as he launched himself up into the air. However, as soon as he flew out of the vortex, a burst of sludge also erupted out from within, then wrapped itself around his ankle before tugging him back down toward the vortex below. In the instant that his ankle was caught within the burst of sludge, Han Li immediately felt his entire foot go numb, and he looked down to discover that both his foot and his boot had turned a gray, petrified state. He immediately swept his other foot toward the burst of sludge, and countless arcs of golden lightning erupted out of the tip of foot to sever the sludge like a golden blade. Immediately thereafter, he flew back over 1,000 feet before landing on the edge of the giant, charred crater, where he cast a wary gaze toward the yellow vortex. After all of the sludge had fallen back into the vortex, a yellow figure slowly emerged from within, and it was a hideous woman dressed in a large, yellow robe. "Elder Shi-chan, what are you doing here?" Lan Yuanzi exclaimed. "What am I doing here? To clean up your mess, of course. Even after all this time, you two still haven't managed to capture him." Shi-chan snapped with a displeased expression. Lan Yuanzi's brows furrowed slightly as he opened his mouth to explain himself, but didn't seem to know what to say. Judging from everyone's reactions upon hearing mention of the name, Shi-chan, it was clear that they were well aware of who she was. Han Li's gaze remained fixed on Shi-chan as he tried to move his petrified left foot, upon which he discovered that he had already regained feeling in it, but the blood flow to the foot still seemed to be slightly inhibited. Everyone, listen up. The man standing before you right now is Han Li, a member of the Reincarnation Palace, and a wanted fugitive that the Heavenly Court has been hunting for many years. He is responsible for a long laundry list of crimes across various immortal regions, including the death of Golden Origin Immortal Palace Master Dongfeng Bai. If you're willing to help me capture him, then you'll be putting both yourselves and your sex in the good graces of the Heavenly Court. What do you all say? Shi Chan asked as she swept her gaze over everyone present. Lei Yus and the others were all completely rooted to the spot, clearly flabbergasted by this abrupt bombshell. After taking a moment to compose themselves, Lei Yus exchanged a glance with Wen Zhang, and the former shook his head ever so slightly. Wen Zhang gave a slight nod in response, and the two of them remained silent, seemingly content to serve as bystanders. After some contemplation, Su Anqian also decided to remain an impartial observer, while Fox 3 and Worm 3 naturally remained silent as well. Shi Chan swept her gaze over everyone one after another, before settling her gaze on the Lan siblings. Lan Yuanzi cupped his fist in an apologetic salute as he said, "Please forgive us, Elder Shi. Lan Yan and I have already sworn a vow against going after fellow Taoist Han for as long as we're in the Ian Pagoda. If you need our help in apprehending him, then I'm afraid we'll only be able to lend you our assistance once we've left this place." "Are you an idiot? What does a trivial vow matter for in the face of the greater good? Have you forgotten our objective for hunting down this man?" Shi Chan snapped. Lan Yuanzi's expression changed slightly upon hearing this, but after a brief hesitation, he maintained his cupped fist salute with his head lowered, and Lan Yan also did the same. "Fine, do as you please then. Once we return to the sect, I'm going to report this matter to our patriarch and have your master provide an explanation for this farce," Shi Chan said in a furious voice. Lan Yan's expression changed drastically upon hearing this, but before she could do anything, Lan Yuanzi tugged on her sleeve as he said through voice transmission, "We can bear the consequences of disobeying orders, but if we go back on a vow, then our master will be extremely disappointed in us." Lan Yan bowed her head again upon hearing this. Shi Chan was feeling very embarrassed by the fact that even the fellow members of her own sect were unwilling to help her, and she threatened in a cold voice, "I hope you two won't come to regret this." All the while, Jin Liu was looking on with a hint of schadenfreude in his eyes. He knew that the more enraged Shi Chan became, the more ruthless she was going to be against Han Li, and that was naturally a very welcome sight for him. Meanwhile, Han Li remained standing on the spot with a calm and relaxed expression, pondering how he was going to deal with Shi Chan. He probably doesn't even realize just how screwed he is. Jin Liu scoffed internally at the sight of Han Li's composed display. "If you're all going to just stand by and watch, then make sure you stay back and don't do anything out of line," Shi Chan warned, then abruptly vanished from the spot without any warning, leaving only a ball of yellow light where she had been standing just a moment ago. Everyone immediately backed away far into the distance upon seeing this, and in the next instant, a violent sandstorm rose up from behind Han Li before converging toward him from all directions. Han Li was already prepared for this, and he channeled his reversal true axis ability to instantly vanish from the spot, escaping from the sandstorm in the process. As soon as the sandstorm closed in around the spot where Han Li had been standing just a moment ago, countless grains of sand instantly erupted in all directions, and a yellow light barrier emerged from within before spreading outward, encompassing the entire surrounding area with a radius of dozens of kilometers in the blink of an eye. Caught within the light barrier, Han Li instantly felt a burst of tremendous gravitational force crash down upon him, as if he were being crushed under several invisible mountains, thereby severely hampering his movement. The scenery within Shi Chan's spirit domain was constantly shifting, and a series of short and barren mountains had appeared on the edge of the spirit domain. As for the area near Han Li, numerous yellow swamps of different shapes and sizes had appeared on the ground, and there was earthy yellow sludge flowing inside, with large bubbles occasionally emerging from within them. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon catching a whiff of the nauseating odor of rot and decay in the air, and right at this moment, a burst of low croaking suddenly rang out from nearby. Han Li hurriedly turned in that direction to discover the head of a toad that was the size of a house exposed above the surface of a swamp, no more than several thousand feet away from him. Its two golden eyes were staring at him in a cold and emotionless manner, and the dense clusters of warts on its skin presented a disgusting and unsettling sight to behold. With a flick of his wrist, 36 azure bamboo cloud-swarm swords appeared around Han Li in unison, and they circled around in the air momentarily before hurtling directly toward the giant, yellow toad. The swords left a trail of golden lightning in their wake, but due to the effects of the earth law powers within the spirit domain, they were traveling far slower than usual. However, the power imbued within them hadn't been diminished in the slightest. Right as the flying swords were about to reach it, the yellow toad suddenly vanished into the swamp. Han Li hurriedly channeled his spirit refinement technique upon seeing this, trying to use his spiritual sense to track it down, but all he could detect was a boundless sea of earth law powers. She's able to use her spirit domain as cover and perfectly conceal her own aura within it. This could be troublesome. Right at this moment, the ground beneath Han Li's feet reared up violently as the giant toad abruptly emerged from below, flinging him up into the air. Han Li remained calm and composed as he swiftly swept a sleeve through the air, and his 36 azure bamboo cloud-swarm swords immediately began flying back to his side. However, before the flying swords could reach him, a huge shadow suddenly appeared up above. As it turned out, a huge mountain had suddenly flown over from afar, and it was in the process of crashing down directly upon him. An ordinary mountain of this size wouldn't have posed any threat to Han Li, but given that it had been manifested within Shi Chan's spirit form stage spirit domain, it was sure to contain boundless earth law powers that would grant it unfathomable weight. With that in mind, Han Li's brows furrowed slightly as he flicked his wrist upward, and his azure bamboo cloud-swarm swords instantly began flying upward at his behest. Right as the mountain was about to crash down upon Han Li, the azure bamboo cloud-swarm swords pierced into its underside, then began releasing a flurry of golden lightning and azure sword projections. A vast sea of golden lightning erupted out of the flying swords, holding the mountain aloft to arrest its fall, while Han Li channeled his heavenly baleful purgatory arts, then began plummeting out of the sky in an upside-down orientation with his fist held close to his waist, as if he were preparing to throw an almighty punch. A massive crater had already opened up on the ground below, and the giant, yellow toad was springing upward with its cavernous mouth wide open to swallow Han Li whole. Within mere moments, Han Li had already plunged headfirst into the yellow toad's mouth, and the toad instantly closed its mouth to devour him. However, at the same time, Han Li threw a punch downward with resplendent starlight glowing from his fist. A vast expanse of blinding, white light erupted within the toad's mouth, which was quickly forced open by a burst of tremendous power that exploded outward from within. Immediately thereafter, the giant toad's entire body exploded with a resounding boom. In the wake of the yellow toad's demise, the surrounding spirit domain rapidly shrank down to only around a tenth of its original size, and the light radiating from it also began to gradually dim, as if the spirit domain were about to vanish altogether. At the same time, the mountain up above disintegrated into yellow sludge that rained down from the heavens like a mudslide. Han Li had no time to evade the falling sludge, and it cascaded down onto his entire body. With a flick of his wrist, he withdrew his azure bamboo cloud swarm swords back up his sleeve, while everyone was looking on with bewildered expressions, clearly incredulous that a great encompassment cultivator had been defeated and slain so easily. Among them, Jin Liu was displaying the strongest reaction, one of both disappointment and indignation. However, right at this moment, Han Li abruptly stiffened like a clay statue, then plummeted out of the sky in a completely uncontrolled fashion before crashing down onto the ground with a resounding thump. An alarmed look immediately appeared on Worm 3's face as she began rushing to Han Li's aid, only to be stopped in her tracks by Fox 3, who yelled in an urgent voice, "What are you doing? Have you forgotten our mission? We need to remain focused on the big picture." Worm 3 stopped in her tracks upon hearing this, but her gaze remained fixed on Han Li. The yellow sludge that had fallen onto him earlier had solidified into a cloak of clay that encased his entire body, and it was as if he had truly been transformed into a clay statue. Furthermore, this cloak of clay was riddled with strange patterns that were giving off extremely formidable earth law power fluctuations, forming a powerful seal that trapped him inside. Initially, Han Li was still able to struggle slightly against the cloak of clay, but as the coloration of the clay rapidly darkened, he was quickly rendered completely immobilized. Only after the layer of clay had completely dried did a palm-sized toad jump out of a nearby swamp before transforming into Shi-Chan's human form, who turned to the clay statue beside her with a derisive sneer in her eyes. Lei Yus and the others hesitated momentarily upon seeing this, then began to fly toward Shi-Chan, clearly under the impression that the battle was over. There was a look of schadenfreude in Jin Liu's eyes as he flew toward Shi-Chan with everyone else, while Worm 3 and Fox 3 remained where they were, seemingly rather hesitant about how to proceed. "You were trying to help him earlier, right? Are you also a member of the Reincarnation Palace? If so, then don't hold back. What if you can still save him?" Shi-Chan chuckled as she turned to Worm 3 with a provocative expression. A furious look appeared in Worm 3's eyes as her hands balled up into tight fists. "So you really are an accomplice of his, you?" All of a sudden, Shi-Chan's voice trailed off mid-sentence as a burst of golden light surged over the clay statue that Han Li was encased in, and a strange-looking golden tree projection suddenly appeared, then began to rapidly grow, sprouting branches and vines that wrapped themselves around the clay statue. Immediately thereafter, a burst of formidable time law powers erupted forth amid a flash of blinding golden light, and the layer of clay around Han Li reverted back into a pool of yellow sludge that flowed onto the ground, following which Han Li sprang forward with the azure bamboo cloud swarm sword in his hand, aimed directly at Shi-Chan. All of this had taken place in the blink of an eye, and Shi-Chan immediately attempted to dart back in retreat, only to discover that a layer of strange golden sand had appeared on the ground below, reaching up to her ankles to root her to the ground. She could feel a burst of peculiar time law power fluctuations emanating from the golden sand below, completely immobilizing her legs. Before she had a chance to do anything, the vines from the golden tree projection also snaked their way over to her before wrapping themselves around her upper body. At the same time, the mantra-treasured axis appeared behind Han Li, further immobilizing Shi-Chan. Han Li plunged his azure bamboo cloud swarm sword down without any hesitation directly upon Shi-Chan's chest, where her heart was situated, and due to how abruptly this sequence of events had unfolded, everyone else was also caught within Han Li's time law powers, rendering them completely immobile. A loud, metallic clang rang out as the tip of Han Li's sword struck Shi-Chan's chest, raising a trail of golden sparks, but the sword wasn't able to pierce through her skin. Han Li was clearly rather taken aback to see this, and right at this moment, a series of yellow runes appeared over Shi-Chan's body, releasing bursts of Earth law power fluctuations that began to contend against the time law power fluctuations released by the manifestations of Han Li's three time attribute law treasures. As one of the three paramount laws, the laws of time held a natural advantage over Shi Chan's law powers, and it was only due to Shi Chan's superior cultivation base and mastery over her law powers that she was able to contend against Han Li at all. The surrounding time law power fluctuations were slowly forced back, and a layer of earthy yellow light appeared around Shi Chan, creating a small safe zone around her as her mobility was gradually restored. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, and he hurriedly injected more immortal spiritual power into his three time attribute law treasures to tighten their hold on Shi Chan. Shi Chan had only fallen for his trap in a moment of complacency, so if he were to allow her to escape now, then it was going to be very difficult for him to trap her again. Thanks to the influx of immortal spiritual power, the three time attribute law treasures were able to slowly eradicate the safe zone that had appeared around Shi Chan, rendering her completely immobile again. Han Li heaved an internal sigh of relief upon seeing this, then swept a sleeve through the air to release 36 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords, all of which released countless arcs of golden lightning to form a dense sea of golden lightning. The sea of golden lightning was churning incessantly as a golden dragon reared its head from within, then let loose a thunderous, draconic roar before twisting around and swooping down upon Shi Chan with unstoppable might. Countless tiny spatial rifts were left in the wake of the golden lightning sword dragon, and the entire desert began to tremble violently as if an earthquake were taking place. Right as the golden dragon was about to devour Shi Chan, a burst of blue light suddenly appeared behind Han Li without any warning. It was a fist-sized blue bead with several golden runes glowing on its surface, and a burst of blue light abruptly erupted forth from within, forming an enormous blue vortex in the blink of an eye. The entirety of Han Li's attention was focused on controlling his time attribute law treasures and containing Shi Chan, so by the time he detected what was happening behind him, it was already too late. He felt a burst of tremendous power sweep toward him from behind, and a resounding thump rang out as he was sent flying forward, resulting in a loss of control over his time attribute law treasures and his azure bamboo cloud swarm swords. The sword dragon formed by the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords disintegrated into thin air right before it descended upon Shi Chan, while all of the azure bamboo cloud swarm swords themselves automatically flew back into Han Li's body. After flying several thousand feet through the air, Han Li was finally able to steady himself before turning to Lei Yus and the others with a furious look on his face. At this moment, everyone was staring at Jin Liu with surprised expressions. He was the one who had just attacked Han Li with that chaotic origin infernal water bead, and in the wake of this inexplicable attack, Su Anqian exclaimed with an incredulous expression, "Why did you do that?" "Why, he's a wanted fugitive of the heavenly court. Should we not all be playing our part to capture him? You are the ones at fault for not helping Senior Shi, while I'm the one doing the right thing," Jin Liu declared in a righteous and justified manner. "Are you not afraid that your actions will bring disaster to our heavenly water sect? How is making an enemy out of the reincarnation palace any more appealing than opposing the heavenly court?" Su Anqian countered in an enraged manner. "Are you saying that I should serve as an accomplice to a wanted fugitive? In that case—" Before Jin Liu had a chance to finish, Shi Chan interjected, "Why not just tell the truth, fellow Taoist Jin? In accordance with the agreement that we just struck up through voice transmission, I'll help you claim Celestial Maiden Su over here as long as you help me capture Han Li." An awkward look appeared on Jin Liu's face upon hearing this, but he quickly composed himself as he said, "In any case, let's capture Han Li first." By revealing their secret agreement, Shi Chan had backed Jin Liu into a corner, giving him no choice but to help her, and he was naturally very displeased by this betrayal, but he didn't dare to express any dissatisfaction. At this moment, everyone was glowering at him with intense disdain in their eyes, and there was even a hint of a killing intent in Lei Yu's eyes. The chaotic origin infernal water bead had interrupted Han Li and allowed Shi Chan to free herself, but thankfully, it hadn't managed to inflict any injuries upon him. Han Li suppressed the fury in his heart as he tightened his grip around his combined azure bamboo cloudswarm sword, then swooped down upon Shi Chan from above. This time, Shi Chan was regarding him in a much more serious manner, clearly having learned her lesson from their earlier exchange. With a flick of her wrist, her spirit domain was conjured up once again, transforming the surrounding landscape into one of mountains and swamps. Sludge began to rise up from the ground before transforming into a series of giant hands that made a grab for Han Li, and he had only managed to fly several thousand feet through the air before another mountain came crashing down upon him. The gravitational force in the surrounding space became heavier and heavier, and as a result, he was slowed down further and further. "Let me help you, fellow Taoist Han," Worm 3 said, following which she released her dark red spirit domain. Situated within her spirit domain, Han Li instantly felt a significant reduction in the potency of the gravitational force acting upon him. Before he had a chance to thank her, Fox 3 also summoned his spirit domain as he sighed. "Looks like I'll have to get involved as well." Han Li was ecstatic to see this, and he channeled his heavenly baleful purgatory arts and true spirit bloodlines in unison, instantly taking on the form of a giant devilish deity with 3 heads and 6 arms. "That confirms it. Those two are also members of the Reincarnation Palace. Help me take them down, fellow Taoists," Shi Chan yelled. Lei Yu and the others remained completely unmoved, and even the land siblings had turned away to stoically ignore her. "Are all of you planning to rebel against the heavenly court?" Shi Chan yelled in a furious voice, but there was nothing that she could do as she sprang up into the air to meet Han Li. With a flick of her wrist, a huge club appeared in her grasp. The club was giving off bursts of formidable earth law power fluctuations, clearly indicating that it was a very powerful immortal treasure. At this point, Han Li had already drawn upon all of the starpur in his body, as well as his true dragon, Kun Peng, and giant mountain ape bloodlines, and divine devilbane lightning was pouring out of his azure bamboo cloudswarm sword in a frenzy, forming an enormous lightning sword that he swung down with almighty power. Meanwhile, layers upon layers of black rock were appearing over the surface of Shi Chan's club, granting it an astronomical amount of weight, and it had also conjured up a giant club projection to oppose Han Li's lightning sword. The lightning sword clashed against the club projection with a deafening boom, sending incredibly powerful shockwaves sweeping through the air in all directions. Amid the shockwaves, a projection of a golden dragon and a Kun Peng could be seen crashing into the club projection one after the other to tear it apart, immediately following which a giant ape projection descended upon Shi Chan while swinging its fists down with tremendous power. The club projection was the first to break, allowing the giant lightning sword to crash down from above unopposed. "Impossible!" Shi Chan exclaimed as a large crack appeared over her club, following which a long gash was sliced into her body from her shoulder to her chest, and she was sent flying back through the air. Arcs of golden lightning clung tenaciously to her wound, and instead of dissipating, they infiltrated her body to attack her internal organs. Shi Chan's skin was extremely resilient, even among early great encompassment cultivators, but her internal organs were rather special and were far more vulnerable. Hence, if she were to allow the golden lightning to wreak havoc in her body as it pleased, then even her cultivation foundation could be permanently damaged. With that in mind, Shi Chan plunged straight down into a swamp below, clearly having decided that her best option was to flee. Jin Liu immediately also fled the scene upon seeing this, but he was confronted by Worm 3 and Fox 3 before he could get away. Instead of pursuing Jin Liu, Han Li remained hovering up in the sky in his three-headed devilish deity form, scouring his gaze over the landscape in search of Shi Chan. Right at this moment, an agonized howl suddenly rang out from down below, following which a figure with silver flames burning all over their body flew up into the air. Their clothes were in tatters, their hair was completely disheveled, their body was riddled with wounds, and it was none other than Shi Chan. Chasing after her in hot pursuit was the Essence Fire Raven, and Han Li immediately pounced at her as well while swinging his sword through the air again. Another giant, golden lightning sword came crashing down from the heavens, and conflicted looks appeared on the faces of the land siblings upon seeing this. The two of them were very close with Shi Chan, and if her life were under threat, then they would be forced to intervene. However, before they had a chance to do anything, Shi Chan suddenly roared in a resentful voice, "You'll pay for this." As soon as her voice trailed off, a gash suddenly appeared over her glabella, following which a longan-sized white bead flew out from within before rising up toward Han Li's giant lightning sword. "Look out, she's going to detonate her own beast core," Lei Yus exclaimed as he reflexively positioned himself in front of Su Anqian. "No, that's her Toad Moon Jewel," Lan Yuanzi yelled, and Worm 3's expression changed slightly upon hearing this. It was said that there was a special type of toad demon beasts that possessed a Toad Moon Jewel in their bodies in addition to their beast cores, and the jewel allowed them to enhance their rate of cultivation progression by absorbing the power of moonlight. The importance of this Toad Moon Jewel was third only to their nascent soul and demon core. As a great encompassment cultivator, the Toad Moon Jewel in Shi Chan's body had to have already been accumulating power for countless years, and its detonation was surely going to have catastrophic effects. With that in mind, everyone hurriedly fled into the distance. Shan knew that he was the weakest of everyone present, and he had already fled far into the distance ahead of everyone else. A hint of foreboding had also welled up in Han Li's heart, but it was already too late for him to withdraw his sword. The Toad Moon Jewel trembled violently for a moment, then exploded to produce an eruption of blinding light, which then suddenly faded away before the entire sky turned dark, as if day had suddenly transitioned into night. A ray of cold moonlight shone down from above, basking the entire landscape in a silver glow. It was as if the entire space had been frozen solid by the cold moonlight, following which everything shattered like a silver mirror, and countless dark spatial rifts appeared in the air. Bursts of spatial turbulence could be seen raging within the spatial rifts, releasing terrifying spatial fluctuations that instantly had everyone fleeing for their lives. However, there were simply far too many spatial rifts in the area, making it very difficult to avoid all of them. In a lapse of concentration, Su Anqian was almost swallowed up by a spatial rift that had abruptly opened up behind her, and it was Lei Yus who swooped in once again to save her. Having been saved by him twice, Su Anqian had finally begun to develop a hint of affection for him, and her eyes were no longer as cold as before when she gazed upon him. However, Jin Liu wasn't so fortunate. He had been surrounded by everyone earlier, so he was the last to flee the scene, and he had only managed to travel a few thousand feet before he crashed headfirst into an enormous spatial rift. He forcibly twisted his body to the side to try and glide through the air in a parallel direction to the spatial rift, but the tremendous suction force released by the rift was too much for him to resist, and he was sucked in inch by inch, with not even his nascent soul managing to escape. The area directly surrounding the Toad Moon Jewel had the highest concentration of spatial rifts, and at this point, Shi Chan was already nowhere to be seen. All that remained was Han Li with his mantra-treasured axis hovering behind him, releasing waves of golden light to slow the expansion of the spatial rifts. At this moment, he was holding a green gourd with its mouth pointed directly up ahead. A green vortex was swirling incessantly at the gourd's mouth, and it was gathering some translucent silver particles in the surrounding area before condensing them to reform the Toad Moon Jewel. The jewel had been absorbing moonlight for countless years, and Han Li instinctively felt like it would be very useful to him, so he had chosen to recover it. After that, he summoned his essence fire raven back to his side, then traversed through the multitude of spatial rifts as he descended back down to the ground. There seemed to be some type of tacit understanding between everyone as they all remained silent, with no one mentioning the battle that had just taken place, and all of them took a few pills before sitting down to meditate. After taking some to rest and recuperate, Han Li rose to his feet as he cupped his fist in a grateful salute toward everyone. Thank you, fellow Taoists. Even though all of them had chosen to refrain from helping Shi-Chan mostly out of consideration for their own self-interest, it was still undeniable that their decision had helped Han Li. There's no need to thank us, fellow Taoist Han. You dealt with her purely through your own powers, Lei Yu said. My eyes have truly been opened, brother Han. Xingshan mused with mixed emotions in his eyes. Time is of the essence, so let's continue onward, Han Li said, and everyone nodded in response before making their way into the spatial door one after another. Han Li's vision blurred momentarily, following which he found himself standing in a gray cave. The cave was quite large, and it extended into shadowy darkness up ahead, making it impossible to tell how long it was. Gusts of yin wind were blowing toward everyone from up ahead, and the air temperature in the cave was quite low, as evidenced by the layer of black frost on the stone walls on either side. Lei Yus and the others appeared nearby one after another, then also began inspecting their surroundings. All of a sudden, Han Li's brows furrowed slightly as he noticed that Lin was nowhere to be seen, even though he had come through first. Everyone else's expressions also darkened slightly upon noticing Lin's absence, but Han Li chose not to bring up the matter as he said, "Let's go. Make sure to be on your guard, everyone." In the wake of his most recent display of power, no one felt it inappropriate for him to adopt a leadership role, and everyone was content to follow him. Spiritual sense was suppressed even further on the 7th level, so as a safety precaution, everyone chose to proceed on foot rather than by flight. Thankfully, given everyone's lofty cultivation bases, they were still able to make very fast progress, nonetheless. However, this underground cave was unexpectedly long, and even after traveling for over 10 minutes, there was still no end in sight. On top of that, the further they went, the more fierce the surrounding yin winds became. All of a sudden, Han Li stopped in his tracks as he warned, "Be careful, everyone." As soon as his voice trailed off, 7 or 8 monstrous creatures with human faces and wolf bodies appeared up ahead. Each of these creatures was several dozen feet in length, and their bodies were covered in long, reddish-brown fur that resembled bamboo fiber cloaks. And as they pounced at Han Li's group, they displayed exceptional speed and offensive prowess. Gusts of black wind erupted out of the claws, easily leaving deep marks on the ground and walls of the cave, the edges of which were charred black as if by some form of corrosion. Lei Yus and the others were alarmed by this sudden turn of events, but they remained composed as they lashed out in retaliation against these creatures. The wolf-like creatures seemed to have realized that they had bitten off more than they could chew, and they opened their mouths to release a sea of reddish-black flames in an attempt to ward off everyone's attacks. However, this proved to be futile as the barrage of attacks tore through the sea of fire with ease before destroying the wolf-like creatures on the other side. After they were slain, The bodies of the wolf-like creatures quickly disintegrated into black smoke, but each of them left a fist-sized reddish-black bead behind. "What are these things?" Wen Zhang asked with an intrigued expression as he raised a hand to release a burst of golden light toward the beads. "Don't touch them," Han Li hurriedly yelled, but it was already too late, and as soon as the golden light released by Wen Zhang came into contact with the beads, they immediately exploded into balls of radiant reddish-black light that swept through the air in all directions. A deafening boom rang out as a wave of reddish-black light swept over the entire cave, causing it to collapse, and Han Li's group was buried under a vast volume of rubble. Thankfully, everyone was well versed in earth movement techniques, and they were able to burrow their way into the ground right as the cave collapsed. However, as soon as they made their way underground, a burst of sinister cackling instantly rang out. Immediately following which a giant black claw, the size of a house, emerged from deeper underground to make a grab for everyone. The giant claw was attached to a massive, lizard-like creature, but its body was far more bloated than that of a lizard. The creature was lurking underground, and its aura was completely indistinguishable from that of the earth around it, so its sneak attack had caught everyone completely off guard. By the time everyone realized that there was something lurking underground, it was already too late to take evasive measures. Right as everyone was about to fall into the grasp of the giant creature, Han Li swept a sleeve through the air to release a bolt of radiant golden lightning that struck the oncoming claw with a loud thump. The bolt of lightning was tiny compared with the black claw, but it was able to tear through the latter with ease, following which it struck the giant beast's chest, blasting a hole the size of a water vat into its body. The lizard-like creature let loose a blood-curdling howl, and it immediately attempted to flee deeper underground. But by then, Lei Yus and the others had also begun lashing out against. The creature was instantly overwhelmed by a devastating barrage of attacks, tearing its body to shreds. As was the case with the wolf-like beasts from earlier, its body also disintegrated into black smoke, and even though it was underground, it still spread rapidly in all directions, staining all of the soil and rocks that it came into contact with black. The black smoke instantly swept over everyone, and they hurriedly conjured up layers of protective spiritual light to try and keep it at bay. Xingshan was at the very back of the group, and he did the same thing, managing to ward off the black smoke with a layer of golden spiritual light. But right at this moment, an extremely faint glimmer of black light shot out of the black smoke before piercing through Xingshan's protective spiritual light and vanishing into his body. However, this went completely undetected by everyone, including even Xingshan himself. After slaying the lizard beast, everyone continued onward for quite some time, and only after advancing beyond the collapsed section of the underground cave did they return to the surface. "My sincerest apologies, everyone. My rash actions placed all of you in a perilous situation," Wen Zhang said in an apologetic manner. "There's no need to be so self-critical, fellow Taoist Wen. None of us could have anticipated that those beads would explode upon contact," Su Anqian consoled. "By the way, fellow Taoist Han, you seem to be aware of what those things were. Would you be able to enlighten us?" Everyone else also turned their attention to Han Li upon hearing this, and he explained, "Those wolf-like creatures were devilish corpse wolves, a type of devil beast found in the devil realm, so it's no surprise that none of you recognized them. These creatures manifest corpse fire beads in their bodies that instantly explode upon contact with any other type of energy." Everyone was enlightened upon hearing this, but at the same time, they couldn't help but wonder how Han Li was familiar with these creatures. Could it be that he had been to the devil realm before? Despite everyone's curiosity, no one dared to pry, and the group continued onward in silence. After advancing for roughly another 15 minutes, a huge, open area that was over 100 times larger than the cave from before appeared up ahead. There were piles of golden ore strewn all over the area, with the largest ones piling up to several hundred feet tall to resemble small mountains, while the smallest ones were only slightly taller than the average adult human, and it seemed that they had been arranged in a set formation. Everyone exchanged a few wary glances with one another upon seeing this, and they carefully proceeded into the area. Thankfully, after stepping into the formation of ores, nothing happened, and after a brief pause, everyone continued onward. Before long, they had already traveled for close to 10 kilometers. All of a sudden, there were no more piles of ore to be seen, and a small plaza appeared up ahead. The plaza was paved with radiant, golden tiles, and at its center stood a golden altar that was over 1,000 feet tall. The altar was split up into the 3 tiers and was entirely constructed from a type of golden material. Furthermore, the structure appeared to consist of only a single piece, with no signs of connective segments to be seen. At the top of the altar was a golden platform that was around 10 feet in size, engraved onto which was a golden yin-yang symbol. Pierced into one side of the yin-yang symbol was a strange, golden sword with a 3-sided blade. On one side was engraved the sun, the moon, and stars. On another side was engraved a piece of scenery complete with mountains, rivers, and forests, and on the final side were engravings of a dragon and a phoenix. Bright, golden light was emanating from the ancient sword, releasing bursts of metal law power fluctuations that struck everyone with a slightly painful sensation, as if their skin were about to be sliced open. Hovering above the other side of the yin-yang symbol was a golden flame the size of a human head, giving off bursts of formidable time law power fluctuations. Bursts of golden runes were flowing out of the yin-yang symbol, spreading over the entire altar to form a cage-shaped formation. The metal and time law powers intertwined with one another, and not only were they not in conflict at all, they coexisted extremely harmoniously, encompassing the entire altar. However, what was far less harmonious was the giant black rift above the altar, out of which gusts of howling black wind were blowing incessantly, looking as if they were coming straight from the depths of hell. The formation of ore around the plaza seemed to have an aura concealment effect, so no one had detected the existence of the altar prior to this, and everyone was immediately rooted to the spot by the enormous aura that the altar was releasing. "What is this? A seal?" Su Anqian exclaimed with a stunned expression. Han Li was also observing the altar with a surprised expression, and his gaze quickly fell upon the ancient sword and the golden flame at the top of the altar. That sword is forged from none other than heavenly Vajra diamond. No wonder it has such a powerful aura. As for that golden flame, the time law powers imbued within it are very peculiar. It's completely different from any of the 5 types of law powers in the Great 5 Elemental Illusion mantra. In contrast with everyone's stunned reactions, Lei Yus and Wen Zhang were much more composed, and they exchanged an elated glance with one another. At the very back of the group, Xingshan was completely rooted to the spot at the sight of the ancient, golden sword at the top of the altar, and his breathing began to accelerate as a look of intense desire appeared in his eyes. He swept his gaze briefly over Han Li and the others, then abruptly shot forth through the air while conjuring up a giant, golden hand that made a grab for the ancient sword. "Don't be reckless, fellow Taoist Xing." Everyone was very alarmed to see this, and in particular, Lei Yus and Wen Zhang flew forward in unison to try and stop Xingshan, but it was already too late. A resounding boom rang out as the golden hand closed itself around the ancient sword, only for countless streaks of golden swordlight to erupt out of the sword, tearing the giant hand into ribbons with ease. On top of that, the sword began to tremble and buzz as if it had been enraged by Xingshan's gestures, and it released a flurry of translucent sword qi that erupted through the air in all directions. Everyone hurriedly sprang into action, to defend themselves from the streaks of formidable sword chi. The Lan siblings were facing each other as Lan Yuanzi opened his mouth to release a blue bead, which had 8 blue, dragon-shaped runes engraved upon it. The blue bead transformed into a spherical light barrier that was several dozen feet in size at his behest, encompassing both himself and Lan Yan. At the same time, Worm 3 swept a sleeve through the air to release a small shield amid a flash of white light, and the shield swelled rapidly in size before transforming into a white light barrier around herself and Fox 3. Lei Yus and Wen Zhang were also working together, releasing numerous small, golden flags out of their sleeves, which descended onto the ground to form a circle around them. The flags released bursts of dazzling, golden light, forming a golden formation that encompassed both of them within it, following which Lei Yus turned to Su Anqian as he urged, "Come in here, celestial maiden Su." The golden formation then extended toward her at his behest to encompass her within it, elongating the circular formation into an oval. A series of mixed emotions flashed through Su Anqian's eyes, but she didn't take any evasive measures, allowing the golden light barrier to enshroud her. However, for her part, she summoned a large blue flag, which released a burst of blue ripples to form a separate blue light barrier that also encompassed all 3 of them. Meanwhile, Hanli let loose a low roar as all of his profound acupoints lit up, following which his true extreme film surfaced over his body. On top of that, he swept a sleeve through the air to release 36 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords, which circled around him to form a golden sword barrier with arcs of lightning flashing over its surface. Immediately thereafter, the streaks of translucent sword chi descended upon him, striking the golden sword barrier from all directions. The sword barrier began trembling violently as a string of loud explosions rang out, and even though the 36 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords remained unharmed, the sword formation that they had formed was on the verge of falling apart. Hanli's expression changed slightly upon seeing this, and he flew back in retreat along with his sword formation, while releasing 2 thick bolts of golden lightning out of his hands into the surrounding sword formation. The formation had been on the verge of collapse, but it was instantly stabilized. However, several streaks of translucent sword chi still managed to sneak through and strike him before the formation was completely stabilized. Thankfully, his true extreme film was able to withstand them with ease. One's true extreme film became more powerful as one opened more profound acupoints. Having already opened close to 1,000 profound acupoints, Hanli's true extreme film was more powerful than any defensive immortal treasure in his possession. At this point, he had flown out of the range of the sword chi, and he descended onto a pile of ore outside the plaza. Hanli had managed to ward off the translucent sword chi without much trouble, but the same didn't apply to everyone. A series of gashes were quickly torn into the spherical light barrier around the Lan siblings, and it began to flash erratically, on the verge of collapse. Their expressions changed drastically upon seeing this, and they hurriedly released a series of blue law threads that fused into the barrier to fortify it. 8 blue dragon projections instantly appeared over its surface, letting loose draconic roars as they roamed over the light barrier. As a result, the spherical light barrier was instantly stabilized, and the Lan siblings were also able to fly out of the plaza to reach safety. Inside the protective barrier, one of Lan Yuanzi's arms had been severed at the elbow, and there was also a deep gash on Lan Yan's shoulder. These streaks of translucent sword chi had been far more powerful than they anticipated. Thankfully, they had summoned their most powerful defensive immortal treasure, the 8-dragon water bead. Otherwise, they would have surely lost their lives. Similarly, a series of gashes had also been sliced into the white light barrier around Worm 3 and Fox 3, putting it on the verge of collapse. In this dire situation, Worm 3 pressed both of her hands against the light barrier, and two bursts of dark red light erupted out of the palms of her hands, forming a dark red light barrier that was imbued with a burst of reincarnation law powers. The dark red light barrier wasn't particularly thick, but it was extremely resilient and managed to keep the oncoming sword chi firmly at bay. However, instead of retreating out of the plaza, the two of them were staring intently at the golden altar up ahead. As for Lei Yus and Wen Zhang, both of them were casting a rapid stream of incantation seals into the golden formation around them, and a golden sword projection that was over 1,000 feet tall instantly appeared within the formation. All of the translucent sword chi that pierced into the formation were instantly tamed, circling around the golden sword projection momentarily before fusing into it. Where's Xingshan? He's not already dead, is he? Han Li scanned his gaze over the surrounding area in search of Xingshan, only to discover that the latter was currently flying toward the golden altar with a cloud of golden mist around him. The golden mist was giving off insubstantial sword intent that resembled clouds and mist, and the streaks of oncoming translucent sword chi merely passed straight through his body without harming him at all. What kind of secret technique is this? Han Li's brows furrowed slightly as he took a closer look, upon which he discovered that even though the cloud of golden mist was keeping Xingshan safe from the oncoming sword chi, with each streak of sword chi that passed through him, the cloud of mist would be whittled down slightly. However, to everyone's surprise, not only did Xingshan not fall back in retreat, he continued to pounce on the ancient sword, and in the blink of an eye, he was no more than 100 feet away from it. The golden flame beside the golden sword seemed to have detected something, and it immediately swelled drastically in size before releasing bursts of golden fire that fused with the sword chi released by the ancient sword. As a result, the streaks of translucent sword chi were instantly granted a faint, golden glow, transforming them into streaks of fiery sword chi. Enhanced by the flames, the storm of sword chi swelled to several times its original size, encompassing the entire area around the altar in a radius of close to 10,000 feet. The cloud of golden mist around Xingshan was instantly completely inundated by fiery sword chi, and it began to rapidly shrink as a string of agonized howls rang out from within it. Fox 3, Worm 3, and Lei Yus's trio were also instantly inundated by the fiery sword chi, as were Han Li and the Lan siblings. Streaks of fiery sword chi fell upon the sword barrier around Han Li, instantly tearing it apart, and the 36 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords were knocked flying like falling leaves in a gust of fierce wind. After breaching the golden sword formation, the fiery sword chi fell upon Han Li, and this time, a series of deep gashes were sliced into his true extreme film, almost tearing through the film entirely. In response, Han Li hurriedly summoned his mantra-treasured axis, which released waves of golden ripples that encompassed the entire area within a radius of over 1,000 feet around him. Enshrouded within the golden ripples, the streaks of fiery sword chi was slowed down significantly, but they were still hurtling toward him, just at a far more lethargic pace. Han Li was rather surprised to see that the fiery sword chi hadn't been stopped entirely by his time law powers, but it then quickly dawned on him that this had to have been a result of the golden flames that had been injected into the sword chi. The time-severing torch appeared beside the mantra-treasured axis at Han Li's behest, and it released a burst of fiery, golden light that manifested the time-severing fire domain. Thanks to the drastic increase in the number of time law threads in the time-severing torch, its powers had been significantly enhanced, to the point that the time-stopping power of Han Li's time-severing fire domain was almost on par with that of Chi Mozi's spirit domain. The streaks of fiery sword chi were finally stopped in their tracks after entering the time-severing fire domain. But right at this moment, a resounding boom rang out from the direction of the land siblings. A radiant, blue sun that was several thousand feet in size abruptly appeared before radiating dazzling, blue light in all directions. 8 blue dragons shot out of the blue sun before pouncing at the mighty storm of fiery sword chi, keeping it at bay for just an instant. Taking advantage of this tiny window of respite, Lan Yuanzi and Lan Yan were able to rush their way to safety. At this point, both of them were looking very disheveled. Their complexions were deathly pale, while their bodies were riddled with wounds, and they hurriedly took some pills to aid in their recovery. Han Li took a glance at the two of them, then immediately turned his gaze back to the ancient sword and golden flame at the top of the altar with an intrigued look in his eyes. The sword was a metal-attribute immortal treasure, while the golden flame contained time law powers. Yet these two types of law powers were able to combine to produce power far greater than the sum of their individual parts. Prior to developing lightning law powers, Han Li's Azure Bamboo Cloudswarm swords were also able to be used in conjunction with his time law powers. But following their attainment of lightning law powers, the Azure Bamboo Cloudswarm swords had evolved into immortal treasures that rejected his time law powers. If his Azure Bamboo Cloudswarm swords could also be used in conjunction with time law powers, then that would undoubtedly make for a very formidable combination. Excited by this prospect, Han Li made a beckoning motion to recover his Azure Bamboo Cloudswarm swords back up his sleeve, then began flying toward the altar, relying on his mantra-treasured axis and time-severing fire domain to keep him safe. However, right at this moment, the black wind blowing out of the rift above the altar abruptly intensified significantly, sending gusts of yin wind sweeping through the entire cave, scattering even the fiery sword chi around the altar. A chorus of ghastly howls rang out as Han Li instantly stopped cold in his tracks. Right at this moment, the ancient sword and the golden flame on the altar lit up once again, as did the golden formation around them, and the streaks of fiery sword chi that were hurtling toward Han Li and the others stopped in their tracks before converging toward the rift. It's too late to be focusing on us now. A burst of sinister cackling rang out from within the black rift, following which a thick bolt of black lightning erupted out from within, blasting a huge hole into the barrage of fiery sword chi up ahead before striking the golden flame. While all of the fiery sword chi was directed toward the black rift, a cloud of barely visible golden mist pounced on the opportunity to drift toward the altar at an incredible speed, timing its approaching to perfection. Everyone's attention was focused on the black rift and the two items on the altar, so no one noticed the faint cloud of golden mist. The bolt of black lightning struck the golden flame at the top of the altar with a resounding boom, producing a massive explosion of black and golden light that caused the nearby space to warp and buzz incessantly. The golden flame flickered a few times, following which its connection with the yin-yang symbol beneath it was severed, and it was sent flying through the air, coincidentally directly toward Han Li. Han Li's eyes immediately lit up as he hurriedly made a hand seal, and several times law threads flew out of his time-severing torch before wrapping themselves around the golden flame and pulling it toward him. To his surprise, the golden flame was easily pulled to his side without any resistance. At this point, the cloud of thin golden mist had also reached the top of the altar, and it abruptly transformed into Xingshan. At this moment, Xingshan was in an absolutely horrific physical condition. His body was riddled with countless wounds, and his legs and left arm were nowhere to be seen, leaving only a severely ravaged right arm behind. Strangely enough, none of these wounds shed even a single drop of blood. The ancient sword was currently still releasing streaks of sword chi, and what remained of Qingshan's body was instantly punched full of holes, almost tearing him apart entirely. Despite this, Qingshan seemed to be completely unaware of his own grievous condition. He continued to stare at the ancient sword with a look of obsessive infatuation in his eyes, and he reached out with his only remaining hand to grab onto the hilt of the sword before tugging it upward. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this. That bolt of black lightning from earlier had been extremely formidable, yet it was only just barely able to knock the golden flame down from the altar. Given Qingshan's current condition, it was extremely unlikely that he would be able to pull the ancient sword out of the altar. However, things did not unfold as Han Li anticipated. Contrary to everyone's expectations, the ancient sword was easily pulled out of the altar by Qingshan, who swayed unsteadily for a moment before steadying him, following which he looked down at the golden sword in his hand with a slightly demented smile on his face. With both the ancient sword and the golden flame gone from the altar, the golden formation instantly dimmed, and all of the fiery sword chi in the surrounding area faded away as well. Right at this moment, Fox 3, Worm 3, and Layus's trio were all revealed. The white light barrier around Fox 3 and Worm 3 was nowhere to be seen, clearly having already been destroyed, and the two of them were currently enshrouded under a dark red wheel. Their clothes were in tatters and stained with blood, giving them a very sorry and disheveled appearance. In contrast, Layus's trio appeared to be faring much better. The golden formation around them was still intact, but less than half of the golden sword projection inside still remained. Layus and Wenjiang were both looking deathly pale, clearly having severely overexerted themselves. Their faces paled even further at the sight of the golden flame in Han Li's hand and the ancient sword that had been pulled out by Qingshan. But before they had a chance to say anything, a faint crack suddenly rang out from within the golden altar, as if something had just shattered. A sense of foreboding immediately welled up in Han Li's heart upon hearing this sound. All of a sudden, a chorus of elated cheers rang out from within the altar, followed by an eruption of blinding, black light, and the entire cave began to quiver and rumble violently. The golden altar also began to tremble violently, and several more black rifts appeared around it in rapid succession. Fellow Taoist Han, fellow Taoist Xiong, place those things back on the altar. Hurry! Layus yelled with a horrified expression, and a hesitant look appeared on Han Li's face upon hearing this. Meanwhile, Qingshan was holding the ancient sword tightly to himself, and he completely ignored Layus as he flipped a hand over to produce a crimson pill, which he promptly devoured. After a brief moment of internal conflict, Han Li made up his mind, gritting his teeth as he prepared to return the golden flame to its original spot. But right at this moment, an earth-shattering boom rang out as the golden altar exploded into countless pieces. Standing at the top of the altar, Qingshan was instantly sent flying by the explosion, and he just so happened to be flung directly toward Han Li. He was in such terrible condition that he didn't even seem to be capable of flight, so he was unable to control his own body as the shockwaves sent him flying through the air. But his right hand remained firmly clutched onto the golden sword, as if it were even more important than his own life. Han Li swept a sleeve through the air to release a burst of azure light upon seeing this, catching Qingshan to prevent him from crashing into the cave wall behind him. "Thank you, Brother Han," Qingshan said, but there wasn't any gratitude in his expression. Instead, he was looking at Han Li with a very wary expression, as if he were afraid that Han Li would try to take his sword from him. Han Li's brows furrowed slightly upon seeing this, and he couldn't help but feel as if Qingshan's sanity were currently a little compromised. However, he didn't say anything as he turned his gaze to where the altar once stood. A door of black light had appeared from the wreckage of the altar, and large bursts of black light were surging out from within. The door of light flashed erratically for a brief moment before abruptly shattering, and in the blink of an eye, over 100 figures appeared in the cave, all of whom were yelling in excitement and exultation. Finally, I'm free. How long has it been? I can barely recall a time when I wasn't trapped in this godforsaken place. Where is Tai Sui? I'm going to skin him alive. Most of these figures were humanoid in form, while some were half human, half beast, and some of them were entirely beastly in appearance. All of them had devilish chi swirling around them, indicating that they were all devilish beings. Han Li withdrew his mantra-treasured axis and time-severing fire domain as he drifted back in retreat until his back was against the cave wall behind him, so that there was no way for him to be surrounded. Most of these devilish beings were at the high zenith stage, and in particular, several of them possessed tremendous auras that weren't inferior to his own. Xingshan had also recovered somewhat at this point, and he hurriedly flew back in retreat as well, situating himself near Han Li. At this moment, there was a layer of crimson light glowing over his body, and countless fibers of flesh were sprouting from his wounds before intertwining with one another to rapidly heal his injuries and regenerate his lost limbs. Before long, his body was back to normal, but his complexion was still deathly pale. At this point, Lei Yus and the others had also drifted back in retreat. Lei Yus's trio was standing together, while Fox 3 and Worm 3 had been joined by the Land siblings, all of whom were glowering at Han Li and Xingshan for putting them in this situation. After taking a moment to revel in their excitement, all of the devilish beings turned to Han Li and the others with sinister grins on their faces. A particularly muscular and imposing man emerged from the ranks of the devilish beings, then asked, "Were you the ones who opened the seal?" The man had bronze skin over his incredibly well-developed muscles, as well as a majestic lion's mane around his head, giving him the appearance of an almighty feline deity. "That's right. We are from the Golden Origin Immortal region and we stumbled upon this place by chance. Who are all of you and why are you here?" Han Li asked. "I really must thank you for freeing all of us. As compensation, I'm going to allow all of you to become our food. Hand over your blood and souls." The main devilish man cackled as a cruel smile appeared on his face. As soon as his voice trailed off, he launched himself at Han Li with incredible speed and power, before swinging his giant fists down upon Han Li. The man seemed to be very familiar with fighting human cultivators, and he knew that the right strategy to adopt was to use his superior physical properties to crush the enemy. Here in this confined space, his physical attacks were going to be faster and more effective than any immortal treasure or secret technique. Unfortunately, he was gravely mistaken on this occasion. In the face of his sudden attack, Han Li abruptly vanished from the spot, then reappeared several hundred feet away. The man immediately stopped in his tracks with a surprised expression upon seeing this, and right at this moment, a streak of golden sword light that was 500 to 600 feet in length came crashing down from the heavens amid a rumbling thunderclap. The streak of golden sword light left a uniform spatial rift in its wake, and its fearsome sword intent instantly filled the entire cave. The devilish man's expression changed slightly upon seeing this, and he made a grabbing motion with his right hand to summon a huge black hammer. With a swing of his arm, the hammer was sent flying toward the streak of golden sword light as a ball of black light. This hammer was far more powerful than the average devilish treasure. During his travels in the devilish realm, he had stumbled upon a mountain formed by profound infernal iron by chance, and he had gone to great lengths to transport the mountain into an underground fire vein. Using the power of the underground fire vein, he refined the mountain over the course of 100,000 years, at which point he had finally eradicated all of the impurities in the mountain to convert it into a chunk of pure profound infernal divine iron. After that, he gathered hundreds of types of premium metal attribute ore, which he infused into the profound infernal divine iron, then forged it using a devilish secret technique for tens of thousands of years to produce this profound infernal divine hammer. The hammer didn't look very remarkable, but it was so incredibly heavy that even the average high zenith cultivator wouldn't be able to lift it. The devilish man possessed incredible strength, allowing him to hurl the hammer through the air like a flying juggernaut. The streak of swordlight collided with the black hammer, and the latter was instantly sliced into two with an extremely smooth cross-section. After slicing through the hammer, the golden swordlight continued to descend upon the devilish man's, whose expression changed drastically as he opened his mouth to release a black bead. The black bead immediately exploded upon flying out of his mouth, forming a ball of black light that was over 100 feet in size around him. The streak of golden swordlight crashed down onto the ball of black light like a bolt of lightning, and once again, the ball of black light was torn apart with ease. The two halves of the ball of black light were instantly eradicated by the sword intent erupting out of the golden swordlight, but the devilish man was nowhere to be seen. The streak of golden swordlight then faded away to reveal Xingshan, and he was still holding firmly onto the ancient sword in his hand. His complexion hadn't improved much, but there was a look of excitement and elation on his face as he stared at the ancient sword in his hand with a fervent expression. It was as if the sword had become the center of his universe, something that he would gladly lay down his own life for. The devilish man reappeared over 10,000 feet away amid a flash of black light, and his complexion was a little pale as he looked down at the destroyed black hammer in his hand with a lamenting look in his eyes. The profound infernal divine hammer was no longer usable, but thankfully its materials hadn't been destroyed, so he could forge it again, but he had no idea how long that was going to take. "That's the primordial ancient sword," the devilish man exclaimed in a wary voice upon catching sight of the ancient sword in Xingshan's hand. After destroying the profound infernal divine hammer so easily, Xingshan's appraisal of the ancient sword had been elevated even further, and his eyes were glowing with excitement as he roared, "We are the ones who freed you, yet you've immediately turned to bite the hand that fed you. You're going to pay for your ingratitude." The primordial ancient sword released a burst of bright swordlight that encompassed his entire body once again as he spoke. Immediately thereafter, both Xingshan and the primordial ancient sword vanished in unison amid a flash of golden light, transforming into a streak of golden swordlight that was over 1,000 feet in length that hurtled directly toward the devilish man with unstoppable might.